Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Archetype Learning Solutions channel, or ALS, as I sometimes call it, where we talk about all things engagement as it relates to engaging your team members within your organization. So if you're just joining and you haven't been part of the channel before, my name is Dr. Danielle Lord. I am the founder and principal of Archetype Learning Solutions, and we are dedicated to helping mainly small business and medium-sized business create an environment where everyone feels healthy, happy, and whole. And it can be done through engagement. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about what I call, or actually I don't call it, I can't claim that I call it the daily dose, but it is referred to as the daily dose. And those are creating happy, well-being brain chemicals called dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. That's why it's referred to as the dose. And it's daily because we have to get these things every day in order to have a good sense of well-being, harmony, happiness, etc. And one great place to give and receive the daily dose is at work. So today's video was inspired by a note that I had seen from a call I was part of yesterday. And I'm going to read this statement, and then I'm going to preface it with some historical context, and then I'll introduce the dose with a little bit more intentionality. So this was what was written and what I'm responding to. So this is, I'm quoting and reading this. Another challenge I frequently hear is a noticeable shift in staff attitudes. There's a growing sense of entitlement among team members with decreased motivation once they arrive on shift. Instead of focusing on the task, time is often spent on personal devices, our phone, right? I don't have my phone with me. And there's a concerning decline in the level of compassion and accountability that's used to be a hallmark of this particular role. And I think that this is a really profound statement, that there is a lack of decreasing compassion within our workplaces altogether. And it is because we have all experienced some collective trauma. So now that I've kind of set that up, let me preface this by talking about setting some context around trauma. And what I think is going on, particularly with a specific subset of the generation in which this particular poster was writing about, which is the younger generation, those kind of 20-somethings that are entering the workforce for the first time. So let's go back 4 or 5 years ago when the COVID emergency measures took place. That was something that created a global traumatic event, global trauma, if you will. And we oftentimes think about trauma as being something that is a big event, a car crash, a fire, an explosion, something that was an event that created a trauma-induced response from us. But there's also something called level 2 trauma. And level 2 trauma refers to daily repeated instances of interpersonal attacks. So those can come in many, many forms. I have talked and written about these things extensively, but they can also occur from the repeated news cycle of nauseatingly day after day after day, 24 hours of the news cycle talking about everything that was going on with COVID. So that's the trauma that I'm referring to, is how we all experience that trauma collectively. And because we all experience trauma differently, we cannot use the measure of somebody else's trauma experience to necessarily define our own. So what happened? We went into lockdown. We had the adult population who probably had some degree of coping skills, some more than others. We had children, in which I think most of us paid a higher amount of attention to the children, kind of in that real young juvenile age, 8, 9, 10, recognizing that they didn't have any coping skills, if any. And then the older generation, who were oftentimes isolated in their homes, in skilled nursing facilities, assisted living, etc. So we have this whole entire kind of middle generation, maybe 17, 18, 19, 20-ish, late high school, early college, mid-university level, who we kind of assumed were adult enough to have the same coping mechanisms that we did. Now, this is going into Danielle's hypothesis here, but we kind of took that population, I believe, really for granted and thought they're fine. And I'm guilty of this too. My youngest daughter was at university. She had an apartment, she had a roommate, they had their cats, and I kind of just figured that everything was okay. But we had this entire population, or this generation, I think, that kind of got left behind. They were old enough to kind of understand what was going on, but they didn't necessarily have the same adult coping skills that we had. So I think they were kind of, we kind of ignored them, I think, and assumed that they were going to be okay as we worked through this process together. So what did that generation do? They relied on their phones. This is my mouse, but I'm using it as a phone prop. So they relied on their phones. And what happened is they relied on their phones was they received, with all the Facebook likes and the TikTok videos and the games that they played, they received a dopamine hit from each one of those interactions. So dopamine is kind of the feel-good chemical that you get when somebody likes your post or responds to something, or you win a game. So those are called short-term dopamine hits. And then we have the more longer dopamine hits, which come from things like completing a project or working on something for a long period of time, and then having something physical, a tangible object to show for the work that you put into it. So those are more sustained dopamine hits, if you will. But we have this entire generation who got all of their energy, their good brain chemicals, their wellness, their happiness, their well-being from their phone. Again, using my mouse. So what now we see these individuals entering the workplace, and what are they? They're addicted to their phone. And because they know nothing more than the quick dopamine rush that they're getting as they're spending time on their phone. They've also been highly traumatized. No one's really talked about that. Have they had, again, did they have the coping skills to work through some of that collective trauma or level 2 type of trauma that we've all experienced, especially as we all, as even adults, were in the same milieu of trauma. So we all kind of got over it. It ended. Everyone went kind of back on their way. Yet we have this generation of younger generation kids, I'll call them, who have now had their brains completely rewired. So they're getting that quick dopamine fix from being on their phone. Okay, so that's setting up the context of this a little bit. So how do we change that? And how does this relate to engagement in the workplace? I talk a lot about the daily dose. I have it in my book. I have it in my toolkit, that we have to be providing our team members with the events and situations that create that neurocircuitry that produces the happy brain chemicals, the dopamine, for example. So putting someone on a long-term project and making sure that we're celebrating the milestones as they move along the way, and then maybe a larger milestone as they complete the project, that creates the long-term sustainable dopamine that differs from the short-term dopamine fix. So if I got a fix, I went to my phone, got a quick hit, okay, that's given me enough to get me through the next activity until I need to reach for the phone again, versus the more longer-term sustainable dopamine. So that's what I'm referring to. So then we have the oxytocin, and I don't have these down pat, but I will leave a brief job aid, if you will, or a little piece of paper sheet that you can refer to that talks a little bit about what the 4 brain chemicals are and what they do. One of them is the feel-good chemical. One is a pain release. That's the endorphins. So you can see that when you download the product in the link below. So that's what we need to be focusing on, is these longer term, more sustainable dopamine hits for everyone within our organizations. But we've got to wean the younger generation off of their phones. So we've got to create a place where they feel safe enough to feel that they can learn something new, to ask questions, to engage with people. We have to learn how to reconnect with everybody. But that, I think we have this entire generation that's just had no ability to connect with folks. So So there we go, the daily dose. Now, the other thing, a couple other things I'll say about the daily dose. We have to have the daily dose of these feel-good brain chemicals daily. And if not, it begins to mimic depression. So another reason why we can look at these kids, again, kids, if you will, and say, wow, they just don't have a sense of happiness or a sense of well-being. Again, they're lacking in those positive well-being, happiness brain chemicals that we need in order to function at a high level within our communities, our workplace, and connect with others. The other piece to this, and I talked about this in one of my videos earlier, where I gave three things that you could do with the daily dose, is that when we're giving the receiver, so we're giving the daily dose to somebody else, we're actually generating happiness chemicals for us as well. So it's a double win. When we're giving the daily dose and when we're receiving the daily dose, everybody is benefiting. And the other nice thing about this is something that even as employees, we can do for others, and we can even do for our managers who are beginning to experience the same challenges of low engagement that our employees are. So there we have it, a little bit of history, a little bit of my own personal hypothesis around this, and then what we can do to promote happiness and well-being amongst everyone. And hopefully we can see a lot of people actually give up that need to constantly be on their cell phone for those quick hits of dopamine. All right, there you have it. If this content resonates with you, I hope that you'll like, subscribe, and share the video. And please feel free to share your comments, your thoughts, ask questions in the comments below. So thank you so much. Danielle Lord, Archetype Learning Solutions, where we talk about all things engagement.